Well, man, it's great to meet you. Before we get into your life and your lineage, I want to know first and foremost, we've gone through quite a thing with this pandemic. 4 years ago, we were wrapping our head around it. I'm
Mm.
curious, how did you get through that time period and how did it change you?
It was kind of we enjoyed it. I have two daughters, and we got so much opportunity to spend really valuable time with them um, during that time. And as far as our business goes, our business never missed a beat, thank God, because a lot of our business is online. A lot of our clients, we meet with them online on Zoom. Uh, and so we were already, kind of set up to do that. So business, really never was affected, which and we're very fortunate, and we're grateful for that. But the time that we got to spend, my wife and I, with our daughters, was just awesome. We still talk about that, and it's a little sad. I have a daughter who's going to college next year, and they're in high school, so you don't get to spend as much time with them. So we really took advantage of that. Um, and so we kind of enjoyed the time,
Yeah,
in solitude. So
I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of silver linings that went into this. I think it was good for the way that we all run around so fast all the time to have a break.
a
So,
hundred percent.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I think that gave everyone a chance to kind of settle down, take a little bit of a timeout. And I know a lot of people, a lot of our clients, a lot of friends of mine made some pretty significant changes in their lives during that time. They
yeah,
did really some self-evaluation and some deep thought, and said maybe the job that I'm in isn't what I really want to do. And we have a lot of friends where who commute from our town um, into New York City every day on the train. They're in finance. They work on Wall Street, and they're taking an hour and a half train in, hour and a half train back every day for many, many years. During COVID, they all worked from home. A lot of those guys said, "I'm done. I'm
yeah.
done with the commute. There's no more of that. We're working from home, or I'm going to find another sector, another industry to work in." And they made complete 180 pivots, and they've never been happier.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting time, and I think a lot of it was a terrible time in many aspects, but I think there was some good things as well, as you point out.
Absolutely. So let's get into your history. And right now in 2024, if I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the curious kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I would tell the third grader that I'm a coach and I'm a teacher, and I help people become physically stronger, and I help people become happier in what they do every day. I think that's a pretty good answer for a third
Yeah.
grader, and I think a third grader would get that. And that's essentially from a very, very high level, is what we do.
Yeah. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I wanted to be a coach.
Oh,
I wanted to be a basketball coach.
okay.
And the reason for that, Joe, is because my dad, who was my mentor, my best buddy, he was a basketball coach, and he used to bring me to his practices when I was very, very young, and I would be running around the gym with all these high school kids, um, and I fell in love with the game of basketball, and so I wanted to be and became a basketball coach, among other things.
So you were an athlete though.
Yeah, yeah. I played basketball in college. I was fortunate to go to college for free on a basketball scholarship, and I was pretty good. And I played for my dad in high school. He was my high school coach, and then eventually after college, I coached with him for probably 20 years. Um, my dad uh, is the all-time winningest high school boys basketball coach in New England.
Wow.
He won 878 games. When someone would bring that up, Joe, he'd be very quick to point out, I also lost 325 games, though. And then he won 11 state championships, which is the most state championships in Connecticut history. And if you brought that up, you'd say, that's true. But I also lost 7 state championship games. And he was always very humble. And he knew he achieved really extraordinary success in terms of wins and losses, but he wanted everyone to know that I also understand what it means at a very high level to lose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a real, that is, and I like to say, Joe, some of my father's best coaching that he ever done. And he won a Lifetime Achievement Award. He's got a plaque in the Naismith Hall of Fame with his picture on it. He's a world-class coach, but some of the best coaching he ever did occurred off the basketball court, not within the confines of the court, off the court, in terms of the impact that he had in different ways on his players. Um, and that is really what he became known for. And that is why we do what we do now. We help former athletes, active competitive guys who were kind of stuck. We help them get out of a rut and get back onto the path where they can start to hopefully excel again. And we've been fortunate that we're very successful in that. We have a lot of clients who have come out of the abyss with a little bit of our help and mainly their efforts and turn the corner. So that's kind of a lot of what we do, Joe, in our work is based on the lessons I learned when my dad was coaching.
It's interesting. I got into sports broadcasting. I've always been into sports. And, you know, there's two things that stood out with what you were saying. Obviously, in New England, you guys understand dynasty with Brady. And
Sure.
we're starting to wrap our head around that in Kansas City,
You sure are.
which I still can't believe it's happening. Because when I was a kid, I grew up watching them at training camp when no one went there, when they had bad draft picks, bad coaching. So when you watch it, I think about what you're saying about your dad. When I see like Andy Reid, the way that he'll help rehab these kids that no one
Yeah.
would give another chance to. In fact, he even drafted that rugby player recently.
I just saw that.
So there's these things that are kind of outside of the norm. But the other really interesting point that you've made too is that there's this perception that when athletes are done with their career, no matter who they are, they're loaded with money and they're going to be fine for the rest of their lives. But that's not necessarily the case. They're still humans. They have a shelf life, and it's typically in their 20s, early 30s that they're moving on and they have a whole life to work. So this is very essential with what you're doing.
Yeah, and it is, and there's and we've worked now. Not all of our clients are former professional athletes. We have quite a few who literally played in the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, who we've worked closely with. But it's also, Joe, a lot of the guys who were a high school athlete, um, and or a college athlete, and just after they're playing, they get a job, and then they just kind of lose their North Star and they don't know how to get it back. So then they start to put on weight and their relationships are affected and their marriages are affected, their job performance is affected, and they don't know how to get back on track. And we don't have all the answers. My wheelhouse, my specialty is working with guys who are active competitive guys who are poor former athletes who kind of know that there's a spark somewhere inside me. I just have to get it reignited again. And so that's kind of the work that we do, and that's become our passion. To help guys like that. Our strategies could help anybody, but that's kind of our wheelhouse, where you were once active, competitive, you were in the flow state all the time, and then for some reason or another, life happens, and you go into a little bit of a shell, and that's where we kind of try to come in and get you back on track.
So it seems like the idea of leading and helping and coaching is definitely in your DNA, which was
Yeah.
passed down from your father. How did
Yeah.
he get it? How did he get that acumen to be one of the best coaches ever?
Well, you know what's interesting, and and we've we know a lot of coaches out there, and we know a lot of players. We're just, we're a basketball family, but we're kind of well versed in athletics, and we know guys in the NBA and the NFL who are coaches, and a lot of coaches, Joe, as you probably know, and I'd love to see. I got to look into Coach Reed. A lot of outstanding coaches were not very good players.
Right.
They weren't outstanding players, and that was my father. He was Exhibit A. He was the son of Italian immigrants, and he was not a very good basketball player. But he went to college. Never planned on going to college. He had a couple of priests that worked at the boys' club that he used to go to. My parents would drop him off at the boys' club, and a couple of priests said, "You're going to go to college." He said, "No, I'm just going to get a job." And they said, "No, you're going to go to college." Help him get into college, and in college, he met what became his best friend, who was about a 6'6" black guy named Al Klingscales, who was a phenom of a basketball player. So my father used to play around with him. Al says, come, join the team. But my father wasn't good enough to join the team. So my father refers to himself as the 13th man on a 12-man roster. So the coach says to my dad as a freshman or a sophomore, when he's never going to get in, he says, "Hey, you want to coach the freshman team?" My father says, "Sure, I would love to do it." And he caught the bug, Joe, coaching that first freshman basketball team in college when he was essentially coaching his peers. He got out of college and then he started coaching middle schoolers, grammar school kids. And he was such a student of the game. He would wear a shirt and tie to the games that, coaching eighth graders, and he had them well versed. He became, a terrific. So he learned, from the ground up. But how he started, to answer your question, is he wasn't good enough to play on the team.
Yeah.
So the coach said, "Hey, why don't you coach?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And the rest is history.
That's right. So, what is your motivation every day to get up, to do the work that you do, to evolve as a human? What is that motivation and drive for you?
Well, I'll tell you, last July, at 92 years old, my dad passed away, and he had a monumental impact on a lot of people, including me. And I'm the youngest of six children, all of us. But I was the one who really took the basketball bug, and ran with it. So we thank God, Joe, have had some success in business, um, and this is what I'm doing now, is what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah.
I have, since July, and this is always on the back of my mind. We've always helped and we've mentored colleagues of ours, and employees of ours, but this is what has become, my North Star, helping others in any way that we can, who are kind of stuck. And that is what we spend a lot of time right now doing.
So, of all of the games that you've watched in your life, what was the one that was the most stellar, magical game you ever watched?
It's a great question. I've played in a lot of big games, and I've watched many, and I've coached in some big ones. But the last game that my dad coached, uh, was, he was 80 years old. It was in front of probably 9,000 people, at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. It was the state championship game, and he was walking with a cane at that time. So I had to bring him, onto the court, help him off the court. And it was a fascinating game. It was one of his best teams ever, one of his most talented teams ever. We were playing a terrific team, and we're down 10 at halftime, and everything was going wrong. I mean, we couldn't hit a shot, they couldn't miss a shot. But my father was very calm and composed. So we walk back out onto the court, and the fans are going crazy to start the second half. And his players sit down, and he says something which is, I'll never forget this. And there's basically a short film that has been written, that has been created about this last game. And he says to the kids, he says, "Hey," he was a rough and gruff, like, Italian. His name was Vito Montelli. So, and he had the voice of Vito Montelli.
Yeah.
So he says to the kids, "Hey, you got your heads down. You got that look on your face like it's all over. It's not. You got 16 minutes. You got 16 minutes. Now get out there and play." they went out there and they went on like a 22-0 run. They win the game by 10 points, and it was remarkable. But him saying that is really, and I've watched this video many times. It's an incredible antidote for life. And so, hey, you got that look on your face like it's all over. It's not. You got 16 minutes. You got 16 minutes. Now get out there and play.
Yeah.
That is brilliant because he's talking to high school kids about a basketball game, right? But in reality, if you think about really what those words mean, that is an incredible life lesson.
Yeah.
You got 16 minutes, you got your head down like it's all over. No, it's not. You got half of your life. So guys have come to us, Joe, and guys have said they're in their 30s, their 40s. Some guys are in their 50s and their 60s. They come out, Tom, I just don't know what's going on with me. And I can go back and repeat that little speech he gave his players. You got that look on your face like it's all over, Joe. No, you're 60 years old. You still got half of your life left.
Yeah.
And that is what we teach. So that game, that was a long-winded answer, but that game was the most impactful game. It happened to be his last game coaching as well. It was his 11th state championship. It was funny because he was a pretty well-known guy, and Madison Square Garden, who does all the Knicks games, obviously.
Yeah. Sure.
One of our good friends sensed, and he's a commentator for the Knicks, became a good friend of ours, and he sensed the week before the state championship game, this might be my dad's last game. So he calls him up and he says, "Hey, coach, is this going to be your last game?" My father says, "I don't know. You never know." My father is a very faithful guy, as we all are. And he said, only when God tells me it's over, it's over. Right now, I don't know. So Mike, our friend Mike, who's the MSG guy, was going away for the weekend. He says, "You know what, coach? I'm sending my crew." He sent his best film crew from MSG. So I'm sending them, and we're gonna tape the entire day,
Yeah.
just in case it's your last game. Now, my father knew it was going to be his last game. He just didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
So we get to the school in the morning, and the whole film crew from MSG shows up at the school, and they tape everything from us getting onto the bus to my father's pregame speech, my father's half-game speech, post-game, everything. And we gave it to a friend of ours who made it into about a 6 or 7 minute clip, which is spectacular.
Yeah.
It's called 11, and it'll give you goosebumps when you watch it. But we have that as to always. So my dad passed away. We have that video, and I've watched that video 1,000 times.
Wow.
There are so many incredible things in that video where I learn a lesson every time, because a lot of his pregame speech and his halftime speech are really, he was known, Joe, and this is one of the things we focus on, for being simple. He focused on the basics,
Yeah.
the fundamentals, nothing complex. And when you focus on the basics, and you focus on the fundamentals, what we call them, even in life, you can make a lot of progress by keeping things simple. And that's what we
Absolutely.
try to do in our coaching.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. So, speaking of success, what are you the proudest of everything that you've done in your life so far? What are you the proudest of?
That makes you think. There's a lot of things. I have two incredible daughters that have become amazing young ladies. My family, we are so close with my entire family. That makes me incredibly proud. We've had success in business and in work, and that's always great. But I think, Joe, we do a lot to try to serve others. And I think that we got that from my father and my mom as well. Serving others, and we try to do that every single day. So I think and now my kids are getting into it. The kids we have coached understand the importance and the magnitude of serving others. And there's different ways that we do that. But I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of, that we really try to keep other people in mind, and it's not we don't have tunnel vision. It's just, it's got to be all of our success, and that's all I'm focused on. No, we try to get everybody involved, and the level of service that we have given to other people and organizations, I think makes me really proud. And
I
that's one of the
just
things we teach.
absolutely. So I just pulled up this video on YouTube, and I think I just saw your father because my dad was full-blooded Italian from New York, and I just wanted to get a visual, and because when you say names and you said
Yeah,
it like you did, I had to see him. So I'm gonna
yeah.
watch it. I'll put a link in
It's
the show notes.
Oh, and Joe, you'll if you're a sports guy, you will love that video. It was professionally done, and it was all
Yeah,
the footage from MSG, and it's spectacular. So
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Is kind of the man behind this mission of what you're doing. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Someone who really cares, Joe. I'm a competitive, active guy, and I like to win. That's why our company we named it Professionals Winning. It's not all about winning. That is one thing that is we make that very clear. It's not all about winning, but it's the and I've watched a lot of your guests, and a lot of guys think like I do as well. It is the pursuit of that. It is the pursuit of winning. It's the things you do to try to get to a position where you're winning. Those are the important steps. And that is what I've always done. I was fortunate to go to college on a basketball scholarship. I barely got into college, okay, and I barely got out of college, okay. I was not a terrific student by any stretch. I struggled, and I'm a grinder. And I think that I've lived my life like that. The success that we have had, nothing came easy, and I think that makes things fun and interesting.
Yeah.
When you got to kind of earn it, you got to figure out some unique ways to get around the big wall. So I'm pretty proud of that.
So if you could see a dream game in the annals of sports history, where
Yeah.
would you go? What would you love to have seen with your own eyes?
I would have loved to have seen um, some of the old school point guards play. I got a chance to watch Tiny Archibald on video, but I would go back in the day to watch John Wooden play some of those great UCLA teams.
Yeah.
I would love to see a bunch of games with Bob Cousy. I would love to see a bunch of games um, with some of the great point guards, because that was my position. Um, and I have a real affinity for guys who are point guards.
Yeah.
And so watching some of the greats, I would love to have seen them live. Um, yeah, and I was a big Celtics fan. So any of those old Celtic teams I love, which is why I have this picture behind
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those days. Yeah, for sure. Um,
And I was going to say this as well. I'm sorry to interrupt
no,
you,
you're good.
but how and you know this, but how impactful sports and life are, and they coexist and they connect, and there's so many different parallels. But getting back to the Kansas City, example, which is a brilliant example. Kansas City Chiefs they had some success in the days. It was sporadic, but then they go and they find this guy Patrick from Texas Tech, who was was had talent, but was kind of a wild horse in college. And when he came to the Chiefs, and he learned under some great coaches and some good players. But what an impact Andy Reid has had on that young guy,
Yeah.
who he molded him, he coached him. But how about Kansas City now with
Yeah.
what
I
has
know.
happened?
It's
I mean,
weird.
there's got to be billions and billions of dollars that have been generated as a result of the success of this team. And I think they do it the right way. Their Andy Reid is so humble. Patrick Mahomes is such a humble guy. Kelsey and all these other guys. So that's an incredible story. I'm so
Yeah.
happy, and I'm happy to happen in Kansas City and not some big market.
Yeah.
Um, and that is something interesting, that it's your hometown. I'm so happy to see that. And that's the impact that sports and athletics can have
Yeah.
on a community.
Yeah, it's a unifier. I mean, I've been to every parade, and it's like with this politically divisive world we live in, that's the one thing you can agree on. We all come together in the sunshine and just say, "All right, this is fun," and that's it.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
it's a good
I
time.
agree. And that's why, we focus a lot of our teaching and our philosophy on sports, lessons from sports.
Yeah,
Um, and those are impactful. Those are impactful lessons that we teach.
absolutely. So speaking of that, if anyone wants to reach out, they want to get involved with your company, anything about your world, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, so we have a website. We're getting into the social media thing. I'm a little bit of it scares me a little bit, but we have a website. It's called professionalswinning.com. And that right now is a place you can find us and learn a little bit about us, and that's our social media presence right now.
Excellent. Tommy, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir, for your story. Thank you for your time. Keep doing the wonderful work. I appreciate it.
Joe, thank you, and you're doing a hell of a job, man. I watch a lot of your episodes, and well done. Kudos
Thank
to
you.
you, and
I,
thanks for having me.
oh,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
It's